Are we live? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, we're live. Hi, sisters. I'm back at it again with another panel. Tonight, we are doing hyper feminine queens and princesses, where drag and Lolita meet quite gloriously, if I do say so myself. Okay, but before we get on to the history and how you can start doing drag, let's do a little bit about et moi. Also, I don't know French, so sorry. All right, so my name is Cello. I also go by Vera Cruz or Penelope. I use they, them pronouns. I am a member of Kogals. I also do boy style alongside Gothic Lolita. And I am very homo, so I am a drag performer. I'm neither a king nor a queen. And I've been doing LGBT plus panels for a while, but this is my first one for a Lolita event specifically. And I'm also pretty swag. All right, so first of all, this is a brief rundown because we've got a lot to cover. Like I was saying, this could probably be 3 hours long if I wanted to be, but we all got to go to bed. Half of y'all are tipsy, so let's get move on. First of all, we're going to go over the history of drag and Lolita. Then we're going to go to makeup and use this foundations to do a tangential application. Then we're going to go on to general clothing fits. And then we're going to have some further learning and Q&As. Just a little community agreement. I'm going to be respectful of language that includes all genders, and also respect that drag, like Lolita, is a spectrum full of different genders and expressions, right? Not everyone is a cis, skinny, white male, and not all of us are drag queens. Some of us are kings and performers. And then the chat is there to ask questions. It's up over here. So if you see me that's because I'm looking at your comments, or maybe criticisms, we'll see. But also some questions like, what is a JSK, won't be answered. Okay? Todo good. Let us begin. Let us know our history. So we are going to recontextualize the relationship between Lolita and drag. So the notion of drag and Lolita being incompatible is largely inconsistent with history. It is a reflection of a worldview that assumes drag and Lolita are uniforms with no room for experimentation, and uniforms which are based off of Western assumptions about drag and Lolita fashion. What does that mean in practical terms? Well, many drag artists today find it hard to be welcome at Lolita events or in groups like Closet of Frills or Ruffle Chat. Western groups struggle to recognize the relationship that these two places have historically had with each other, right? And we can see in comments and posts that drag and Lolita are considered to be like sissies or, kind of the RuPaul version of drag. And that is largely based off of stereotypes about drag. So what does the actual history say then? Well, there's a lot of interlapping between drag and Lolita. These are 3 common identifiers that I have said or pointed out or noted. So let's go with the most obvious. Mana. We all know Mana. Love Mana. Clearly. Mana has never openly claimed the title of drag queen, at least not within a westernized context, but Mana is still recognized as performing in drag or having the EGL versus the EGA look, right? And Mana really redefines femininity and masculinity within a context performance. You see it in music, in movies, and just in pushing forward society, similar to how drag operates. Another important thing to note about Mana, which people see over and over again, is the idea of a pale face, right? In heavy eye makeup with contact lenses, and we can see what I'm referencing right now. But it's not just Mana. We see it in other visual kei artists like Riku, Hizaki, Aya, Kaya, etc. They all have that similar ambiguous androgynous look pioneered primarily by Mana. And this is just another slide with more examples just to give a brief overview. And so going off of these other visual kei artists, you see a lot of artists and visual kei people being models for GLBs or in brand collaborations and albums. You can just see an overlap between these two communities. And what's important about this is it's a more normalized an acceptance of drag as its own visual language and something which can complement Lolita. And there's a special area to look for outfit ideas as they show more wearable forms of drag off the stage. Not necessarily padding. You can see kind of like bare faces. It's a little bit more couture, but it's still extra. And then it's also important to recognize some other larger influences. You see it in the Victorian and Rococo aesthetics, right? Like Rose of Versailles, which harken back to the idea of female impersonators, or the historic overlap this time period had with being queer. And then you also have Roku Gyaru, which also influences a lot of eye makeup. Okay, so overall, drag and Lolita can and have been done before, and you probably liked it. It's just not within the westernized context. Perfect. Now we know general history, FAQ, brief rundown. How do we actually do the thing? Like how? So let's start off with makeup. One of the most obvious examples that we see in this form of drag is shironuri, right? It's a great alternative to contouring, which can be a very heavy point of contention to westernized drag. You know, you think, oh, it's a little bit too harsh. It's not really approachable. It looks a little bit too costumey. So emphasizing shironuri or even just focusing on highlighting is a great way to go against that and kind of establish yourself as doing drag, but in a distinct visual language. So some of my favorite products are the Ben Nye cream in pure white. That one is not the clown cream. Don't get me wrong. This comes in like a little pot and you just put your beauty blender and you dab it over your face. Something to be aware of is the undertones that you get. Obviously, with certain artists, we kind of do like that bluish tint, but it's also not necessarily practical. And it can almost look like patchy if you don't wear it properly or if you don't use a good primer, color corrector. So that's why I really like to do near white foundation. Right now, this is Huda Beauty and Milkshake. I really enjoy it on camera. It looks great. It obviously is not a pure white, but especially if you have tan to dark skin, you don't need an exact white, and probably an off-white is best. So on more accessible or a little bit less expensive stuff, you've got LA Girl. That's a good shade to mix in with others, and a lot of pure white stuff is actually meant to be contour and highlight mix-ins. Otherwise, you've got Kat Von D, or now KVD, excuse me, no longer associated with Kat Von D. Their lightest shade is a near white. That one's a little bit more pink, just something to be aware of. And then we're going to go for some setting products. So another one that you can get at Makeup Maniacs if you're in Denver, or that's popular with stage makeup, is the RCMA No Color Powder. That one is fully transparent. It's kind of on the same level as Ben Nye baking powder. It has a similar consistency. It's just one of those like well-known products. Otherwise, Makeup Revolution, if you want just like a near white baking powder, obviously a lot of people love and use air spun powder. That's another big one, but it does have a little bit of tint. And then Ben Nye obviously has a clear powder. And then I really like Huda. She has a shade called Sugar Cookie, which is a good near white. The last thing that I'm going to mention when you're doing your face, one, I really like this. It's something that like you push into your powder and you just slap it on, because a big point in drag is you're going to have many layers of makeup. I've got my brows covered in glue, and then I've got 3 layers of powder over my brows, and then I've got foundation, and then I've got a different foundation, more powder, eyeliner on top of my brows, black eyeshadow too. So you just really like to have a lot of powder to help kind of set in stuff. Also, finally, when you're considering your powder, is consider white cast. White cast is when your powder, usually something that's really finely milled, has a lot of zinc in it. And while it can get you a really transparent or white looking face, when you have flash, it can kind of bounce back. Not to harken back to Mr. Charles, but there is that photo of him and it's just like white. But that can also be a good thing. So just consider that strategically. So another important area where drag and Lolita meet is within eye makeup. This is a great area and a way to go all out. You can do weird stuff, and this is again breaking the boundaries. Like in drag, there is often an assumption that, oh, drag queens just have the big chunky liner like Trixie Mattel, when that is not actually the case. I have some drag queens here in the eye picture, and they're probably not the ones you're expecting them to be. And so really just doing unique and fun stuff. Brows are often thin or blended in with the nose contour. Lashes are optional. I'm wearing lashes right now. Some of these people do have lashes, some of them don't, but more so that kind of spiky bottom lash. You see it in the Rokugyaru pick at the lower end. Another good thing or something to note about eye makeup is, you know, typically this makeup is an area where Gyaru and Lolita overlapped a lot of in the scene of Visual K, because a lot of these artists did do the kind of Gyaru droop. And Even today, mine is actually a variation of the Garu droop. I just filled it in with black, which is something that Garus do. And so that's a great area to look for tutorials. You can also see that overlap in how I'm recommending Garu eyelash brands like Diamond Lash. Ardell has a spiky line that you could use. And it's really hard for me to recommend certain products because it's just what you want. I would say get a good neutral palette. Anastasia Beverly Hills is good. It's a little powdery. It's fine. I really like it. A lot of nice warm neutrals. And then you've got Morphe. Morphe is good. It's cheap. There's a bunch of different colors, different undertones. Juvia's Place is a good one too. In terms of indie brands, you've got Black Moon Cosmetics, Glam Gore. Those are some indie kind of goth brands if you're leaning that way. ABH Modern Renaissance is kind of a good go-to if you're into sweet and you want to experiment with more pastel and rosy colors. And then I would say get a good rainbow palette, just something that you can, experiment. A lot of these looks, as you can see, are kind of black and white, but there are bits of color, and it's definitely an area where you can kind of bring back some of the drag if you're feeling like no contouring, no big fake nails, and you kind of want to bring some stuff in. So that's an area where I would suggest is within, pops of color, play with glitter, play with texture. It's better to go bold and then refine. Like you can see that some of these people just have blood or just huge kind of webs and crosses on the face. Other insignia are really common as well. So going off of that, other features of this kind of makeup are the lips. Lips are often underdefined or have a really defined Cupid's bow. Gradient lips, sometimes called soul eater lips if they're more gothic, are also common. You can do that with a Q-tip, some Vaseline, what other lipstick you like. I'm a big fan of Sugar Pill. That's what this is. It wears pretty well. I like all the colors. Most makeup stores seem to only carry neutrals and maybe like a bright berry shade, but that's also something if you're interested in. Mainly gothic styles go for the underlined, defined Cupid's bow look, while more sweet styles go towards the gradient lips. And that can be a little bit of a point of contention if you are coming from a Western drag perspective, because we are accustomed to just like overlining, even if you're doing cutesy stuff. But that is an area to just play around with, even some glitter, toppers from like Too Faced. Another area to bring back kind of the drag, if you feel like your current look is good, but it might not be like drag, is to do tattoos and fake piercings, right? I've got some, I don't know if you can tell because of the lighting, but you can draw them on. You can use like little fake barbells. You can do crosses, insignias, runes, just other symbols tattooed on the face. And it also kind of gives a good kind of like statement, So those are some areas of makeup that I really enjoy. And those are just some ways in which you can do drag through a makeup perspective without reducing drag to a costume or a stereotype or a uniform. All right, cool. So now we know what the face looks like. Let's go for some clothes to match the face. All right, so generally clothes are mainly more or less low key. It's a little bit more typical because we all know that Lolita is primarily based off of the clothing, right? It ranges from Goodo to over the top sweet. It's really similar to a non-drag cord, but there are some fit considerations. And here on the screen, I've got some of my drag besties, Aquamarina, Felix, and then Angel Face. So in terms of general rundown of things talked about, this is just most talked about to least talked about. Also, extra note here again that this is all dependent on personal body, so I'm not really going to get into specifics. In fact, many drag queens who are Lolitas are not AMAB, aren't skinny. So this is just a general things of stuff to be considerate about. So you've got your shoulder width. That's super common talked about. Any Brolita guide will usually talk or mention shoulder width. You've got height, another widely known and discussed fit consideration. You've got your shoe sizes to be aware of. Chest circumference is a little bit less talked about, and that's not just fillers, it's also in regards to binding, although those are some areas where people might, not be as eager to mention. Otherwise, you've got bodice length. That's not really talked about enough. And then you've got some arm slash inseams, and I don't see that talked about really at all, but I think those seriously affect fit considerations, okay? So, most talked about, shoulders. Everyone knows about shoulder problems. It's one of the most common things, affects OPs, affects blouses, something people have been struggling with for ages. General piece of advice is to avoid puff sleeves. That's personal preference. It can just kind of be uncomfortable around the biceps, depending on where it hits. It can also, people say it doesn't look very flattering. I think whatever fits best and makes you feel confident, makes you happy, looks good. But it is an area where, the gathering isn't all there, yada, yada, yada. We already know, okay? Another alternative I often see are the full kind of elastic blouses that I'm wearing right now with the round collar. I don't mean Peter Pan collar. I mean like round collar. These are good. They have a lot of ease of fit, but they can also rise up, on the shoulders like they're doing with mine. They don't often sit off the shoulder like models like to wear them as, although that is also something that could be related to just general mobility. You should probably add 2 to 4 centimeters for best fit. I would especially consider, how often you want to move around your arm or your shoulder if you're going to be doing a lot of performing as a drag queen or king or performer. You might want to consider something like the elastic round blouses where you can just stretch it out. And also, maybe not something too expensive because it will rip. Again, halter necks, you can DIY these. They help free up the shoulders, and I personally like how halter necks look. And a great way to avoid having to deal with your shoulders is bustiers, because these JSKs don't have to worry about shoulders at all. There's no straps. Although you should be considerate about other fit issues like chest area, torso length, height, because a lot of these are short. Going off of the idea of being short or tall, you've got height. Height issues, I'm 5'4", small. So I'm not really the best person to give advice for, but luckily there are many groups that give a lot of advice about height and fit stuff. One of the most common pieces of advice is to get an underskirt or to get T-length JSKs. I know Juliet at Justine does some. Taobao brands are getting more into that. That is mainly Triple Fortune. A lot of classic brands have that stuff, although you want to be considerate of practicality issues. If you can get away with not wearing a T-length dress, that might be best, because if you're moving around a lot, people aren't going to be able to see your body. They're not going to be able to just shimmy around as much if you're doing a lot of dancing. They can get pulled on stuff because you're dealing with more surface area. Other stuff, is peaking bloomers. I really like that. It's cute, especially in old school. It's a great way to just kind of be fun, and it's also a good way to protect your lower regions if you're going to be doing a lot of splits. Most drag performers also layer their leg wear. So we'll probably have 2 to 3 layers of tights on, regardless of padding. You don't really have to pad if you're wearing Lolita. Your petticoat will come through in that regard. And usually drag performers will wear 1 layer of orange tights to bring out the undertones or to conceal the green undertones of the padding you use, which is kind of custom though. And then you'll probably have layer of nude tights, layer of fishnet tights, actual tights, and then maybe additional overlay stuff. So it's something to be considerate about how your height may affect this. Maybe you want to have pure black tights on, or maybe consider something with a pattern instead of the usual orange tights. Again, consider, how heavy something might feel. A lot of us have issues with OTKs, or the kind of like polyester, I have some from Wattier, and they just tend to like ride and fall over. shoe, like sock tape and glue are a good way to help avoid that. But it's still kind of like to be considerate of garters. But I know in kind of a context, garters aren't necessarily like a little bit finicky. Just some stuff to be aware of. And then also shoe size. I don't really have large feet. A lot of people do. And so there are a lot of resources. If you go on Big Sisters of Lolita Fashion or just ask most groups, they will be able to tell you different size of shoes and, just general places. I see Angelic Imprint, Antina, Demonias, which I have a bunch of. I love my Demonias. I also saw a Facebook group that sells like larger shoes. I'm not entirely sure how active it is, but that is there and it does exist. Also, last note, walking aids. So aside from obvious mobility conditions that might, have you require a walking aid, with drag, your height may come from wearing really tall shoes. So consider having like a parasol or a cane, just something that you can kind of rely on, and another pair of shoes as well. That is mainly for a more performance thing than like going out to a meet. Other shoe considerations with drag, something with a sturdy heel if you're just beginning drag. Again, always bigger is better, but with shoes, you might fall over in those big heels or the stilettos. When you're bending stuff down a lot, with a lot of those tall platforms, especially from Demonia, the sole can kind of separate from the platform itself if you do a lot of bending over. So you might want to take that into consideration, and that will also ultimately affect how you cord your outfits. So some stuff that is less talked about, the chest area. And back shearing is a great option because it provides a range of fit while keeping the front bodice intact. So considering how most shapewear or binding or padding or filling will affect this, full shearing can kind of give chest loaf, which is a whatever term, or it can just kind of affect a look. It's also more space for things to ride up when you are performing because the full string, kind of wants to contract. So that is something to be considerate of. That's why I really like back shearing, because you still kind of have that bodice intact. Other things is we also have some issues with full boned or the boned bustiers. That can be another area where chest loaf or lumps might come into play. It's also not necessarily super practical when performing because if it's steel boned, you're going to be bending down and shifting around and doing a lot of just various movements. I also take a page out of the Trans Mask book, just layer a bunch of clothes to conceal dysphoria areas, boleros, gilets, blouses, JSKs on top of OPs or whatever the kids are doing nowadays. Other stuff to consider is the bodice length. So sometimes an item will say it fits on Lollibrary, but the smallest tailored part, it doesn't really sit where your smallest measurement is because you might be taller or shorter than that. Waist cinchers can be layered over OPs and JSKs if you want to give it a more low waist or kind of tailored look. Just make sure it doesn't squash a petticoat. Usually stuff from Oz and Est or on Closet Child are nice and small, and so you don't really have to worry about, per se, a typical kind of Amazon corset that just totally alters the shape of a dress. Other things is to be considerate of are halter necks. Again, those are easy to adjust, and they you can sit them up higher or lower depending on how they go. You've also got strap extenders, another good alternative. You can DIY those pretty easily. Or there are some that are pre-made if you want something that's like a cute design. Also with drag, just be considerate about how a strap extender might break or it might not break. And, if you're worried about it breaking, I know some people who have used like yarn as strap extenders and they just like put a bolero over it. Salopettes and different cuts of an item. They are other areas. So salopettes, you do have a lower waist. it does sit much lower, and you can adjust the straps pretty easily because most of them, at least a lot of those from AP, do have those kind of buckles where you can move stuff up and down, but you sacrifice garment length with that. A lot of those sit really, really short on the body. People who have gone to meets with me and I've worn my salopettes know that yes, they do. And they also definitely affect the amount of floof or poof that you want to have with an item. And then low waist cuts are good if you do have a longer bodice, but they aren't super common. I'll see them, Dolly Cat is a big popular one, mainly AP, maybe Meta too, but they're just kind of rare, so you want to be on the lookout for them. And then finally, arms and legs. This is an area that can seriously affect fit, but I feel like not enough people talk about it. You just should know your circumference, especially for OPs, coats, and blouses, especially when performing. When you're moving around so much, you want to be considerate about, how your arm and your biceps are. Again, not everyone has one specific body type, but often I find that like my biceps just like stick out if I'm wearing something with kind of the puff sleeve cut. Also, I would say look for less gathering. And what I mean by that is stuff that intentionally has like oversized sleeves or isn't super like flush to the arm. A lot of atelier bas I really enjoy, but it can be really hard to fit into their items, even if you do fit into the chest and the shoulder, just because they got like a lot of corset lacing on the arm and they're just really stiff. So that's something to be considered about, especially if you wear OG. And usually with things with less gathering, it's flowier, it just looks nicer, it's a little bit more dramatic too. Again, though, it's always a balance between what fits best and also what won't get destroyed in 5 minutes when you're on stage. Awesome. So you've also got plazo pants or wide leg stuff. That's good for EGA or OG. Wide legs are great. They also look really nice when you're moving around, full shearing, but you also want to consider your calf measurements. I know that there's a full shearing kind of pumpkin pant capri short from Alice and the Pirates, and it has like a really nice accommodating waist, but it's like really tiny around the calves, so not many people can fit into it. And also practicality. I've been mentioning this a little bit. Be considerate that you might be performing. And even if you're not performing, you're going to have a lot of makeup on and a lot of just layers, leg wear, that sort of stuff. So consider, how will your cord look on? How will you put your cord on with this makeup? A lot of people use an old wig cap, a netting cap to put over their face and then like put their actual dress on with that kind of additional layer. I know that some people also use like silk stockings, but like whatever. And then we'll put on like the makeup, like our lashes and our lipstick on after that's done. A microfiber towel beneath the face and applying liquid lipstick, lashes, etc. Do that stuff last. Again, especially with the powder, I would do powder before putting on your jumper skirt and just do all of your sealing, especially if you're going to be putting on a kind of wig cap, because things might move around if you don't. OxiClean is God. That is my favorite way to deal with makeup stains. Love OxiClean. Another thing is performance, right? I've talked about this a lot. How are things going to move around? Do you need to pin things in place on your body? Sometimes drag performers, I pin my petticoat a lot, especially if I need to like roll it up. I'll pin it to the inside, and you can use that doing a couple of safety pins. You can just put them in alternate directions and kind of interlock them. That's a good way to make sure that things are secure. That's also a good tip if you want to use your wig. Speaking of wigs, if you're wearing a wig, which most drag performers do, it's also a big area of overlap between visual comp and Lolita. We all like our wigs, although a lot of us drag performers like a little bit heavier of wigs. How are you going to keep your wig secure? A lot of drag performers, it varies across the board with headgear. I personally have a bit of an issue with headgear falling off. Some drag performers don't No matter how many times I bobby pin, it just always falls and slips off. Even when I'm not performing, if it's a clip, it'll fall off. Whatever. People can sew your headgear into your wig. If you are wearing like one of those kind of maxi pad headdresses, you can sew that into the wig cap. Again, just be aware if your item's delicate, that's where it's kind of like, maybe I don't want to sew it in. Hair combs are good. Consider, there's a common issue of things falling off when you have the hair combs or when you have bobby pins that are, again, kind of crisscrossed on top of each other. A good way to overcome that is with a bit of dry shampoo. Have it right here. Also pomade. This is not it, but I have one from Lush called Dirty. And if you just run like a little bit of pomade through it, that will create more tact. Also, hairspray. A lot of people love Got2b. That is a really good one for securing wigs. Again, if you just do a little bit, it can kind of create like a crunchy texture. Sorry, I'm reading the comments right now. Yeah, ridges is good. Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. I haven't been able to say hi. I've been kind of like making sure I got through all this because this is a lot to process. And I wanted to have a lot of time to answer questions because I know that this is an area where a lot of people are wanting to explore, but, might not know how to do it and are a little bit scared because I think the Lolita community has kind of made drag seem a little bit scary when it's really not. So I've been just trying to get through this. But yes, I really like those ridges. And thank you to everyone who's been leaving nice comments. I promise I'll scroll through them on YouTube while I'm cringing at my voice. I'll be like, oh, but I'm really glad that people are learning a lot. Again, I'll have more time for questions. Also, when considering stuff like sewing or just anything that will alter the headpiece, again, be aware of texture and the pomades. Those will get on your fabric headpieces. Those are going to, you might have some grit and grime. So things that can freeze better or just have a little bit of a drier texture like this dry shampoo. Dry shampoo is also great at reducing frizz because Lolita, especially with the Tombow brands, there's a lot of shine. That is something that we all grieve with, have to deal with. Another thing that is good for creating more texture is if you do a fabric softener bath. And so what that is most wig stylists, and this is not actually Beach Babe, but you can use this texture spray that will leave a residue on the hair, will have a mixture that's like 1/3 fabric softener, just any kind, whatever scent you like. And then maybe 1/3 conditioner if you choose, and then the rest with water. And you can spray this on your wig, and that will create the wig softer. It's easier to detangle. I know Lolita wigs are usually pre-styled, which is something that I could talk about for days. I used to have a blog where I would do Lolita hair tutorials, and that was a big point of contention because more and more of the styles are just pre-styled. But that is a good way to get the wig softened. And if you do a bath, which is where you just make this mixture, but in a quart or a liter, just an insane amount of water, a bin, you can soak your wig in there, and the more fabric softener, the kind of almost grimy, I don't want to say grimy, but it is like an oily texture it will get. But that is a way to create more grip in the hair, and you'd leave that in the bath for probably, I've seen anywhere from 1 day to 5 days, especially if it's a really cheap wig. The longer, the better. Since it's synthetic fiber, you can consider stuff like that. Another way, if your wig is heat proof, or if you don't really care about potentially damaging the fibers, is to crimp, right? Get a little crimper and you can crimp some of the sections. That can create more track when you put in your bobby pins. But most people sew, most people pin, just because we're doing so many head thrashes, it's just really moving around a lot. And also, the obvious retort might be, oh, we'll just wear a headband. But when you do a headband, it slides off, and there's not necessarily a go around for that. So I would say avoid headbands, bows, canotiers, Stuff that you can just easily like throw off. Like I've used detachable bows on dresses. I remember I was performing in Denver at a bar. I think it was Blondie. Anyways, boomer rant. I was wearing sugar fairy cake. I think Jamie in the chat actually owns it. It's in black. And I had the detachable bow or the beret like in my hair. And I was just like doing my thing. And the angelic pretty bows are pretty secure, right? So I thought I was good. And it was just like stuck like here. And it would just gradually like fall and fall and fall. And that was kind of gross. Yeah, you have a dress. It's a cute dress. So be considerate, about stuff that you can also will stay secure, but if you need to, you can throw it off. I've been talking a little bit negatively about RuPaul's Drag Race. There are a lot of great drag tutorials in the makeup section to get a general beat for how drag queens put on their makeup, or drag kings, although RuPaul's Drag Race has never officially allowed kings to enter. Another good area about RuPaul is that Drag Race is that you can see a lot of these queens, like I know Miss Cracker or James Mansfield, they have like videos where like they're doing like a number and like part of their wig is just like falling off. And so it can give you an idea about like what to do in those situations. And you just got to rip it off. A lot of times you just rip the wig off. We all know about the wig reveal because people are just planning that your wigs and hair is going to move around, which is very not the experience wearing Lolita. A lot of these wigs also have a smaller head circumference. And it's just, it's just a different world. My wig rant is almost over. I just really like wigs. Something else to be considerate of when you're wearing a wig is price. A lot of brands like Dreamholic, Delau Home, a lot of these Taba brands are great wigs. They're also really cheap, and that's good. But why are they cheap? Well, not only, production things, but also the amount of tracks that they use. And tracks is just like how many strips of hair do you have going around your wig. Drag performers, our wigs, you can do it really cheap. James Mansfield, sorry, reading this. Oh, yep. Yeah, you just put the wig on. You put someone else's wig on because wigs are a beast of their own. You can also secure wigs with lace. Many drag wigs are lace front wigs, another area that differs from drag and Lolita, where we see, going back through the presentation, a lot of bangs, a lot of bangs. But many of these wigs have less tracks. They are a little bit more shiny, and drag wigs historically cost more, anywhere from the $50 to I spent $350, or I've seen wigs go for that much, but be sold at a markdown price. And that is mainly because of it is not how natural it looks. I think that is a big thing. In Lolita, we are assuming that the higher quality usually means more refinement, more naturality. And I think that's a point of contention because just because something's high quality doesn't mean it has to look natural or realistic. Drag can be art, it can be couture, and it can also be really bold and really weird and out there. And so a lot of times with these wigs, they are incredibly expensive because they have a lot of hair. And the idea is that you're going to be styling them, you're going to be teasing them, they're going to be shiny. Shiny, you think this is shiny? Going to be very shiny. And that's something you have to understand, and it might be an area of compromise where for some meets, I decide, okay, I'm going to wear something a little bit more natural. I'm going to put on the Priscilla wig. And then for the club or the drag show or the brunch, you're like, okay, let's do something big, something bold. Awesome. So, general practicality rundowns. I am also always able to answer more questions about wigs. Love wigs. In the chat if you have any. Resources. I've given you a lot of ways on how to do drag yourself, but how can you do drag with other people? There are some groups to join. So something that is I want to make note of here is that a lot of these spaces, if you can, just kind of read them, you got Trans Lolita community on Discord, LGBTQIA plus Lolitas on Discord, Trans Lolitas on Facebook, LGBTQIA plus fashion support on Facebook. You've got Amino, you've got Alt Fashion, Amino, has a group, and you've also got the Lolita group, although that's a little bit tentative. There's a chat on there, but also be aware, people might be a little bit more aversive. I don't know exactly. And then you've also got alternative J fashion lovers on Facebook. Yes, lots of resources. But unfortunately, I think for some of us, we're coming from a Lolita perspective, is that we notice that a lot of these groups are trans oriented or LGBTQ plus oriented. Not all drag performers are trans nor LGBTQ plus members of that community, but many of us have experienced issues from Lolita communities that overlap significantly. A lot of times when people are accused of being sissies, you see that kind of overlap in experiences of trans women in particular and drag queens, or ideas of people, worrying about their masculinity. If they're a trans mask or NB, and also maybe a drag king, there is an overlap in that experience. And so these places serve as safe spaces for alternative performances of gender, which includes drag. Also, I know that some people may eye roll at some of these groups here as they are known for being amateurs or not exclusively Lolita. But I think that highlights how oppressive Lolita communities in the West have historically been towards people who do drag, and how desperate for support many drag artists feel that they are willing to turn to these groups that might not be ideal conditions or will foster growth, just because we feel so isolated from larger spaces. So I would, argue people watching this to be considerate of that fact when making judgments, and also to be aware of how your own communities operate in regards to gender acceptance. Leave this up here, if you want to look at it while I take a drink. Okay, awesome. So that concludes my panel. We've been through a lot. I am totally willing to go back to certain slides to do more elaboration. Feel free to ask questions to me. My TikTok, I'm most active on there because I'm a teenager. It's Vera Cruz's. You can also find me on Instagram at v.eracruzes. Same thing. Stella Trevino on Facebook. My DMs are always an open area if you want to explore drag, if you want more personalized advice, aside from the chat here. And also big thank you to SlidesGo for letting me use their cute slides. Awesome. So now I am here. I am looking at the chat. Thank you for linking my Instagram. If anyone has questions, I'm going to quickly, roll over and look. Portuguese. Food is always good. Yes, so much work for my brows. You are so right. Oh boy. Yes, we always, wigs, love wigs. We love a theme, beverages and alcohol. Yeah, that is true. Vodka soda. I saw that antique soda stuff. Those were very similar, very, very, very queer. Withstand being uncomfy. Yes. 3 hours to get ready, and also brand. That is true. A lot of drag queens rep makeup brands in particular. Thank you for the compliments. An outfit rundown. Yes. Yes. Oh, Josuke's in the background. Sorry if you can see him. So I am wearing, this is Castle Mirage by AP. I do have a corset on, living life a little dangerously. This is from Lip Service. This is from, if you are in Denver, it's from Fashion Nation. I really enjoy that. This is from them. This is also from an indie. I think it's called Ape Leather. I like them. And this is an antique that I got. This is from Restyle. I got it on Closet Child. And then this is an Amazon wig. Yeah, a lot of places, require people to wear it or to be a part of it. And that also comes down to the amount of people that infiltrate those groups and share, like spread people on other sites. So some drag, I think I saw something about wig shops. Okay. Arda is a very popular one. Just note that Arda I think I even have a blog post. I might link it later on if I can find it. But Arda is a really popular drag wig company alongside Lolita. But I'm sure, you know, being in Lolita, you have the same issues that their wigs can be a little bit bulky in the wrong areas. They are very shiny, but they do last a long time. And a great thing about their association with drag is that they come in a lot of wacky colors and they are withstandable. They can withstand almost anything. A good steamer, a lot of drag queens will steam the wigs, and then like after you're done teasing it, or if you want to take down a style, you will just soak it and then steam it and then brush it out. And all of my Arda wigs have withstood that. I've noticed a little bit of change in quality over time with Arda wigs. I got one recently and it was just very stringy, but it is a good wig shop. And if you're a drag queen, it is great because they have multiple wigs in the same color, always in stock. In my Himigatu days, I used to like stack multiple wigs, and I used Arda for that because they just tease really, really well. Another wig shop that I go to a lot, if you want something lace front, I go to Love Queen Wigs. This is not from them, but if I'm usually wearing a lace front, it is from Love Queen Wigs. They are a good place to, and I'll go back. Sorry. I know this is kind of like saying we're done, but we're not done. I have a lot of talking to do. I like Love Queen Wigs. They have a lot of sales. They're the places where I've seen wigs for $300 to $450. But I like that they do a lot of unique color blending, and their lace, that is another area where drag would like to spend money, is they have Swiss lace or HD lace. And that's a really nice type of lace. And their wigs come pre-plucked. Another company is Wigs and Grace. That is a really popular company. A lot of Rue girls use that. A lot of Dragula girls use that. And I'll get to the Dragula question in a minute. But their wigs do not come with pre-plucked lace. And so when you pluck your lace, you know, if you're not necessarily used to that, it's a good skill to learn, but it can also be really intimidating. And for like $10 more, I would just go through Love Queen Wigs if there's a style that you like. Webster Wigs, if you're a UK friend, or in the EU, very popular, very dense. Instagram, full of them. They have some really fun, unique colors. Really great place if you want to try stuff out. 1-800 Wig Takeout is another good place for drag queen wigs, similar to Wigs and Grace and Love Queen Wigs. A lot of these places will put out like 1 to 3 similar styles, but with slight variation, so it's up to you to decide. So those are some of my favorite places. That is more on the lace front. You might have to cut your own bangs into them because a lot of them do come with the Marcel wave or just flushed back. I also like Priscilla. So Dragula. I really like Dragula. I think it's a better alternative to RuPaul's Drag Race purely by the fact that it's more inclusive of different experiences. And I really like the disclaimers about drag being an art. I think I know some people, I know like one of my drag friends who's not a Lolita but does Decora is a member of the House of Glamour, so I'm a little bit personally biased, but I really like how they operate. Obviously, they're, you know, I think the actress from Hereditary was on there, and I think she was rocking like a Taobao OP. And it does fall into some of the trappings that we see with many goth subcultures about like Lolita being like creepy doll. But I think it does a much better job than like some other RuPaul examples, which just don't open the door for any alternative forms. Because at least they recognize that like what they're doing might not be how it's actually done. It's just personal expression. Whereas I feel like with Ru, there's a little bit of a, this is how it is. So that's why I like this. Did Arda move to Denver yet? Yes, I am pretty sure Arda has already moved to Denver. I think they were saying that they're moving in like January. So I really like Arda. And if you're in Denver, Arda might be closer. And Millie Shapiro, yes, she does. She does. Follow her on Instagram. She's a good Instagram content creator. All right. Any other questions? Any parts you'd like for me to go over? I'm sorry. I know that I kind of rushed through stuff. I really was expecting this to be like 2 hours long. Oh yeah, okay. Alice and the Pirates are a hero. Okay. Fun. Respect the drip. Yeah. So if there is nothing else that people would like me to talk about, there is my TikTok. please follow me. My DMs are always open. Thank you for being here with me. We went through a lot together. I did a lot of rambling. And I am willing to post my makeup recommendations in the chat or on another page. And I will see you all in the next one. So, bye. I mean, I'll still be here saying hi to everyone, but bye. Love you all.